this past week with people like Ammon Bundy and even Ryan and Clive and all coming together and coming out in defense of the right of the immigrant to immigrate, right? And this has caused patriot heads to explode all over the USA because the level of fascism and nationalism and pretense that we've created in the USA has destroyed our freedom. And the truth is this: if you actually go back and really start looking at this, the concept of closing our borders and restricting the immigrant was when they really perfected our slavery, when they really perfected the slavery and really destroyed our freedom. So today I'm going to give anyone the opportunity. I know a lot of you guys in here already know this. Hey James, good to see you in there. Some killer videos you're putting out lately, man. So I want to talk about this rationally, okay? If there's such a thing as an illegal immigrant, prove it, okay? Now, I've talked about this a lot. And I've talked about the fact that the federal government has no authority whatsoever over immigration, only over the standards for becoming a citizen, which comes years after immigrating. Okay, the federal government has zero authority, this much, zero, over immigration. Now, this is affirmed in the 9th and 10th Amendments because there's no authority granted to them, but also restricting travel is affirmed in the 4th Amendment. The first argument people come to me is they say, well, the Constitution doesn't apply to non-citizens. That's the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. Anyone telling you the Constitution doesn't apply to citizens has a fundamental misunderstanding, guys, of what the Constitution is. The Constitution is a rule for government. It's not a rule for you and me. The Constitution is saying this is the limits of our government. And in the Bill of Rights specifically, it's saying these are the human rights that we're reminding the government of. All right? So there's no such thing as crossing a border illegally. There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. So I'm inviting anyone because what I'm noticing with Ammon speaking out for the rights of the immigrant, and Ammon comes at it from a little bit different perspective. The Bundys come at it from a little bit different perspective than me. I've sorted through this for quite a while now and really have come to grips with the fact that my fascism that I was taught was patriotism was a lie. And that restricting other people is never freedom. So think about the irony, right? People are outraged. People are saying they wish they had never supported the Bundys and that they had died on their ranch because the Bundys were standing up for their land rights. Okay, so get the hypocrisy of this. The Bundys were standing up for their land rights, and the BLM, an unconstitutional agency, was trying to violate those rights. And people stood up for that because they said, well, the federal government's out of control. The federal government's the criminals. They have no right, thanks 220, they have no right to restrict things that they were never given authority over. Now you fast forward to the people that they hate. Oh, those brown people over there, we don't want them in our country. We don't want them taking part in our socialism. Suddenly, even though the Constitution, even though the Border Patrol, the immigration restrictions, all of them are every bit as unconstitutional as the BLM, the EPA, and all the other unconstitutional things that the government does, suddenly we praise the government in that. Oh, that's great. How dare anyone oppose the Border Patrol? They're protecting our border. No, they're not. They're destroying our freedom. So there's going to be some naysayers in here, but I challenge anyone. Prove it. Because I've been proving my case for years, and people keep saying, Gavin, you're an idiot. Gavin, no border restrictions means no country. No border means no country. But we're not talking about whether a border should exist. We're talking about, do you need permission from government to travel, to move, and to live? Because that's what people are really saying. They're saying you're not allowed to walk across our line that represents our sovereign territory. You're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to feed your family. You're not allowed to survive because you don't have a paper from the government. If freedom exists, how does a paper from government have any relevance to that freedom? Something that is made up, a rule, a statute that is made up that violates life, liberty, and property is not law. And even the founding fathers, for those that respect the Constitution and believe in the Constitution said, Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 78, any law that violates the Constitution is void. It's not a law. It can't be unlawful if the law that makes it unlawful is illegal. And yes, that's right. Our country was built by immigration. It was built by open borders. And now I've studied this. I've written articles. There's absolutely zero discussion from the Founding Fathers in the First Congress, the Federalist Papers, all that. The Constitutional Convention. The idea of restricting immigration was laughable. It did not enter. Obviously, the borders will be open. Anyone could come in and partake. The USA was a nation designed to welcome, right? A great nation is not a nation who locks itself down and builds walls and makes itself an open-air prison. A great nation is one who welcomes the poor, the weak, the broken, and the helpless, and lifts them up. That's what makes a great nation. You don't make a great nation by abusing your neighbor. You don't make a great nation by building walls. You don't make a great nation by saying only people that have permission from government to live are allowed to live. Now, do you notice all the naysayers in here? They can't make a single argument. See, I can argue this biblically for those of us that are Christians. I can argue this constitutionally. I can argue it historically. But the naysayers, they can't find any nation that was made great and that retained freedom through a wall or through restricting or abusing the poor. They can't find any nation, right? Berlin builds walls. Free nations tear them down. End of story. It's a government by consent of the governed, and yet we say, well, the government has to, you have to have an official paper, otherwise you have none of those rights. That's ridiculous. When the Constitution was agreed upon, there were no U.S. citizens, you guys. Until that was all wrapped up, okay? The idea that the rules in the Constitution restricted the individual's rights was ridiculous. That completely defied the point. The Constitution is a rule for government, and it applies in how they treat everyone regardless of their status. The moment that person steps within the territory that we've hired these security guards or employees to manage, they're bound by the Constitution. The idea that a Border Patrol agent has different rules, when a Border Patrol agent is actually an illegal agent, it's an office and an agency that has no right to exist under the Constitution. So these people that are arguing, oh, the immigrants need permission, they're an invasion. Think about this for a moment. Honduras. You know why people are saying, oh, Honduras, everybody's leaving Honduras because they ruined their own country with socialism, and then they're coming to ruin ours. See, they just make up this stuff. All the people can say that hate liberty and hate freedom and hate the Constitution and hate their neighbor. All they can say to Gavin is shut up. All they can say is you're an idiot. All they can say is, Gavin, you're not a patriot. All they can do is sling insults because they've never researched it. They hate freedom. They hate the Constitution. They hate their fellow man. All they want is for them to be better than someone else because the USA is a nation of slaves. And so to console themselves, they say we're better than all the rest of the world. And they just try to convince themselves that in complete cognitive dissonance. All right? Thanks, 220. So listen. Why is Honduras the way it is? Guess what? The USA, Honduras fought, cast off their military dictatorship, and made a republic. The USA didn't like that. Now, I'm giving you the brief version. You guys can look into this. You can verify all this. The USA didn't like that, so it's documented under some of the leaked emails from Hillary Clinton that the USA went into Honduras. They disrupted their elections and their politics so they could oust the president of the republic and put a puppet in. So the USA, think about the level of hypocrisy. The USA went and interfered with Honduras. Honduras is not a socialist country. The USA is far more socialist than Honduras. The USA went to Honduras because Honduras wasn't playing their game, apparently. They disrupted the politics until the president had to flee for his life, inserted their puppet regime in Honduras, and the violence has increased, and the cartels and the drug war sponsored by the US has made more and more and more violence, all right? The USA quite literally went in. Not that it would matter, they have the right to travel anyhow, but the USA went into Honduras, ruined their country, The Hondurans hear the propaganda from the USA saying the USA is great and it's free and it's amazing and we respect people and we honor freedom and we take care of people. So these Hondurans get up and say, our country has been turned upside down. Let's cross the continent to go find the USA where we're told it's better, right? The USA spends billions on propaganda convincing the world that it's great, only to have these immigrants get to our doorstep who have the right to travel and be kicked in the teeth, tear gassed, deported, attacked, have guns pointed at them, and be assaulted by the terrorist blue ISIS thugs called the Border Patrol after thinking they were coming to find freedom because we told them we were the greatest. The whole context of this is prove me wrong. Give me one argument. Give me one proof. You cannot be an illegal immigrant. Immigrating cannot be illegal. Traveling is a human right. Do you have the right to stop someone because they're walking on the public road and hurting no one? Do you have the right to molest them? Thanks, Axel. Do you have the right to molest someone if they're not hurting you or anyone else and they're simply walking down the road and they cross a line that you've defined? Not private property. People say, oh, we have a right to close our private property. Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it. Okay? Yeah, you have a right to build a wall around your house. Great. Except for you can't actually do that in the USA. If you try to build a wall around your house, the government will come and tear it down and fine you because they don't allow you to have privacy. So they've convinced you to hate the immigrant and say, build a wall around my country to lock me in, but you don't have a right to wall off the country. It's not your property. It's the public land for beneficial use. So think about what you're saying. Make one argument, even one. Shut me down. Silence me. Because telling me to shut up and that I'm an idiot isn't working. Because you have no facts. The psychotic build the wall, abuse the immigrant, deport everyone even though they've hurt no one because they don't have magic papers from government to live and feed their family are mentally ill. And if you support it, you're not a patriot. You're a fascist. You cannot love freedom, Jesus, justice, and abuse your neighbor. The two are non-synonymous. It's not something I made up. This is the basic foundations of human law and rights, guys. Appreciate the support, guys. All right? So what happens? They get to the border. Here we are. Do you have a right? I'm going back to my question. Let's keep it on point here. Do you have a right to stop that person? And the answer, of course, is no. They've not hurt you. You don't have a right to molest them. Well, guess what? Even for those that think, oh, the government is good, we need more government. The government cannot be given more authority than you have as an individual. That's the fundamental maxim of a government by the consent of the governed. You can't give authority that you don't have in the first place. You have no authority to restrict who travels across the open land and the open road. Neither does your government, because you never had authority to give it to them in the first place. So people say, well, they have to follow the law. They're illegal. No, they're not. You're illegal for trying to violate them. And you'll be held accountable for it because you're a criminal for supporting locking people in prisons, abusing them with blue ISIS, throwing tear gas at them because they try to exercise their right to travel, and pointing guns at them because they want to feed their families and live. Thanks, Ace. You can't make an argument against what I'm saying because it doesn't exist. For the Christians, it's backed by the Bible. God says, treat the alien the same as the citizen. Oh, how does that work? Well, citizens don't have rights. I hear this garbage all the time from people pretending to be Christians and patriots. Human rights. Do you have the right to live? Do you have the right to eat? Do you have the right to feed your family and be left alone? Do you have the right to not be enslaved? Do you have the right to not be murdered for trying to feed your family? As long as you're not hurting anyone else, of course. So even if we go back to that maxim, everyone else has the same right. You're not better because you're white, because you're American, because you're German. You're not the master race. You psychopaths. Everyone is created equal. I've said that recently. All men are created equal, and people are like, that's such a communist ideal. It's like, these are people from my country, guys, that I escaped, that I'm now a refugee from because it's so psychotic. Our founders, the opening of the Declaration of Independence is we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Now let's take on this argument. I just saw this one popping from the chat. Heaven has a wall. I can't even believe how dumb people are. They simply repeat the ignorant nonsense that they're peddling. Okay, so let's say you believe like me and you're a Christian and you believe in heaven and you believe in the gates of heaven and all this stuff, right? Think about what these people who pretend to be Christians and neighbor lovers and patriots and freedom lovers are saying. Heaven has a wall. We have a right to have it too. They're saying that the all-knowing, omniscient, all-perfect creator of the universe has a wall in eternity. They're actually saying they're God. They're saying they have a right? The creator of human rights. This is from a Christian perspective, of course. I know everybody won't agree with this, but the creator of human rights, they're saying, has a wall in eternity and rules for heaven. Therefore, we can do the same thing. We can abuse people. We can decide who gets in and who gets out, right? As if they're the all-knowing creator of, well, everything. Think about the idiocy of that. Now, let's not get onto the theology of heaven. I just want you to recognize, for those that believe in the Bible and heaven, these people that are saying this, they don't believe in God. They don't believe in Jesus. They don't believe in freedom. Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. And the hypocrite says to him, in Luke, I believe it was, with the story of the Good Samaritan, he says, well, who is my neighbor? And Jesus makes an example of the man being robbed. And all the good preachers go by on the other side of the road, and then the Samaritan, who everyone hates, comes by, and he helps the man. And he says to the hypocrite Pharisee, well, so who helped his neighbor? And he said, well, the man that helped him. And he said, so go and do likewise. Jesus said, love your neighbor, and then he said, everyone's your neighbor. And then this same Bible says, treat the immigrant the same as the citizen. And people have the gall to come out and say, I'm a Christian and I believe in freedom, but I think we should ignore the Constitution, which forbids all immigration restrictions. I think we should ignore human rights, which fundamentally give us a right to travel and live and exist off the land. And we should also ignore the Bible, which says treat everybody exactly the same and don't be a respecter of persons, which completely excludes being better because of where you were born and your papers and, well, everything. These are fake Christians. They're fake patriots. They're frauds, guys. And I'm not afraid to say it. And again, we're back to the same thing. Prove me wrong. Not one argument has been made in here that's anything but hyperbolic crap. And that's the reality. Oh, I love this one. No borders, no nation. See, here's how ignorant our society's become. We're not even talking about whether a border should exist. Completely different conversation. The founding fathers discussed the border is a marker in the sand to say this is where our people live and we have these sovereign rights and we're going to defend them within this boundary. That's all a border is. That's the purpose of a border. Okay? It's to define this area. A border has nothing to do with immigration. A border doesn't give you the right. The right to travel across that border is exactly the same as the right to travel across a state or on the public street. Okay? So, again, no argument. There is no argument. We're not discussing whether borders should exist tonight. We're discussing, do you have the right to abuse someone because they traveled without permission of the government that we all know to be corrupt? The problem is I'm presenting rational facts. I'm presenting history. The founding fathers were absolutely for open borders. No one can make a real argument against this because there isn't an argument. You can only be for the immigrant and their right to travel, or you can be against the immigrant and their right to travel and against freedom and against loving your neighbor and against Jesus and against justice and against the law. The people that are supporting immigrants being arrested and deported because they do not have papers are the ones violating the law. The Constitution says, 4th Amendment, 9th Amendment, 10th Amendment, forbids all immigration restriction and forbids the government restricting travel unless the person is committing or about to commit, or there's probable cause that they have hurt someone, that committed a crime against someone. That's it. That's it. The people that hate freedom, the people that want the wall, the people that are supporting Donald Trump's fascism, they've never actually learned history for themselves. They've never actually fought for freedom and understood what it means to be free. They've always lived as a slave. And so here we are, with the USA, a socio-fascist state that's gradually collapsing in on itself, as the slaves inside cheer to build a wall to lock them in their prison. And as the puppet masters create chaos, terrorize the world, create the drug war, create all the narratives, create all the fear, and people say, well, an immigrant threw a rock at a Border Patrol agent. Guess what? The Border Patrol agent was a criminal. Don't be a criminal and a terrorist, and maybe, just maybe, people won't treat you like one. Keep speaking the truth, keep loving your neighbor. And I know I seem frustrated maybe and angry. Well, I am angry. I am angry at my neighbor being abused. I'm angry at people pretending freedom is murdering people at a border. I'm angry at people pretending that courage is obeying government and cheering terrorists because they don't have the courage to stand for freedom. Because they're the ultimate cowards that say, only I should have nice things, only I should have freedom, and everybody else should have to obey me and my friends. They're the ultimate anti-patriots. Guys, keep loving your neighbor, keep speaking out. We need more people making videos like this. It was great to see the Bundys come out, and even though they don't approach it, maybe they're not as hardcore as me about it, but you know what? They're coming out and they're saying, wait a minute, the wall is not freedom. Abusing immigrants is not freedom, and they're catching a lot of flack for that, but it's okay to catch flack from pretenders. It's okay to stand up. The only hope we have to preserve freedom, and the USA is gone, the USA is collapsing, who knows what will come in that land in the future, but it's okay to not walk into the gas chamber, it's okay to walk away, it's okay to leave the USA, to try to find freedom. That's the concept. The USA was founded on people who fled their country to try and find freedom. Open up those borders, tear down those walls, tear down those prisons, and don't let the naysayers who don't have any facts and can only spread hate get you down. They're just too ignorant, too shallow, and too filled with hate to actually have a concept or a love for freedom. All right, guys, thanks. Have a good night.